Well, John Bolton, of course, knows something about the handling of classified documents. He was Donald Trump's national security advisor from 2018 to the next year. Also served as U.S. ambassador to the UN under President George W. Bush. Ambassador Bolton, welcome back to Morning Rush. Good to see you. I will assume, but correct me if I'm wrong, that you had a job where national security was literally in the title. So when you see pictures of the nation's top military and intelligence secrets piled up in bathrooms and ballrooms, what's your reaction?
Well, I think it demonstrates just how serious these charges are. And unfortunately, it's reflective of the way Donald Trump treated security classifications, even when he was in the White House. He just didn't care much about protecting the safety of things. He has done things like tweet out a picture from America's national technical means, as we like to call them euphemistically, of something that happened inside Iran, just tweeted it out to the world. And that's just emblematic of his attitude overall. So, you know, this indictment is really very narrowly tailored. It's a very powerful indictment, very dangerous for Donald Trump, but it's narrow. It could have been much broader given the amount of documents we're talking about and their potential sensitivity.
And for folks, and there were a lot of folks who shrugged off the New York indictment. You know, it was hush money to a porn star and campaign finance, things in the weeds kind of stuff. This, not only because it's state versus federal, this seems a lot more serious. There are images to go along with it. You know, that image now in the bathroom instantly became famous over the weekend. Explain to people, though, the kinds of documents that were there in Mar-a-Lago that should give all of us pause, because again, this isn't just where Trump lives. This is an event space where there's fundraisers and weddings and banquets, and who knows who had access to those materials. But explain what kinds of stuff were in those dozens and dozens of boxes.
Well, over the course of his term of office, the president was given uncounted amounts of information about American military capabilities of our adversaries, threats from terrorists, proliferation of nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons, enormous amounts of information about sensitive diplomatic, economic matters. And the level of things the president sees, by definition, is at the highest you can get. No small problems come to the president. By the time they get to him, there's nobody else below who's able to make the final decision. So to give him the information he needs, there's simply no ceiling on how much or how sensitive it can be. And the concern here is not, nobody's alleging here that these documents have fallen into the hands of Russia or China, but that's not the point. The issue is, if you don't safe hold the documents, if you don't look out for their security, you dramatically increase the risk of compromise. And to have these documents in unsecure locations, in a nightclub, basically, just really defies description. I might say one thing here. Some of the president's defenders have said, but the Secret Service is there and they safeguard the documents. I can tell you from my own experience, the job of the Secret Service is to protect the president here. It's not to safeguard the documents. They're obviously aware of what's on the property, but their responsibility is safeguarding the person of the ex-president, not the documents.
Do you think this kind of handling of classified and top secret information is disqualifying from returning to the Oval Office?
Absolutely. It displays a cavalier attitude about American national security. It shows how little Trump fully understands the gravity of the decisions that he's going to make. And it's disqualifying because if Trump were truly innocent, he would want nothing to distract him from getting an early trial as soon as possible to prove his innocence, to remove this threat to his reputation. And yet he apparently believes he's going to go through an entire presidential campaign with this hanging over his head. It's a real threat to the country. I hope the Justice Department tomorrow at the arraignment, and then after that, presses for a very speedy trial. And as I say, if I were Donald Trump and I were innocent, I would want an even speedier trial than the Justice Department, because I want this cloud from off my head.
To me, one of the most disturbing and haunting questions of the whole ordeal, regardless of the legal or political fallout that we may see from this, is that we still don't have, and likely never will have, an understanding of not only why he wanted these documents, but also why he refused, in the heart of the indictment, to give them back, despite the request, despite the subpoena, despite the feds coming into the home, didn't want to give them back. And you have to ask yourself, why was he hanging on to these things for dear life? What did he want to do with these documents? What was he thinking about doing? What do you think he was able to accomplish by having these things? And I ask that in the very serious context of Donald Trump, if nothing else, being an extraordinarily transactional human being and transactional politician. The root of the first impeachment was, I need you to do us a favor, though, talking to Zelensky about getting dirt on the Bidens. You know this man, you know national security. Why was he fighting like hell and lying to the government and to his own attorney to keep the nation's top secrets in his private estate / nightclub, as you described it?
Well, we can't say for certain, but it was not for legitimate ends, that's for sure. It may be something as simple that proves to Donald Trump he had the documents and you don't. That's part of his mentality. Trump sees everything through the prism of the question, does it benefit Donald Trump? And if these documents contain compromising information on a foreign leader, if they contained information that would be valuable to a foreign government to know about the United States, obviously the possibility of a transaction to exchange the information for something of value is there. But I think fundamentally, for the tens of thousands of people in the federal government who, to protect national security, and the State Department, the intelligence community, the Defense Department, who deal with classified material, if they did a small fraction of what Trump is accused of, they'd be fired from their jobs, they'd be court-martialed if they were in the military, they'd be prosecuted, and they'd be washed up. So for the effective functioning of the government, for Trump to beat this indictment, for people to give him a pass, sends a corrosive signal through the government, and has a corrosive effect on our national security.
And you have to wonder, will that be the mentality of the 12 people ultimately picked to sit on this jury? It has to be a unanimous verdict. One person who doesn't see the prosecution's point of view on this, Donald Trump gets acquitted, despite all of the buildup and drama leading up to this moment. Also along the same lines of national security, do you share concerns about what we may see tomorrow, the threat of violence, and the fact that some of that is being stoked by politicians calling for an eye for an eye and things of that nature? Are you worried this could be another flashpoint in which political violence emerges?
Well, I certainly hope not. You know, there were similar fears before his indictment in New York. It turned out when you added the pro-Trump demonstrators to the anti-Trump demonstrators, they probably still didn't total the number of media representatives that were there. I would hope for the same thing tomorrow. I can't predict it, but I just urge everybody to calm down here. This is a very serious matter, but it goes to the integrity of our judicial system. And the rule of law in this country. And that's not going to be served by violence from Trump supporters or Trump opponents.
And last thing, do you reject the main argument we're hearing from Trump and from others that this is the weaponization of the DOJ, this is a political persecution? What's your response? Because that has so far been the main response to the indictment.
Yeah, look, I'm an alumnus of the Department of Justice. I've been an assistant attorney general during the Reagan administration. I know many people there. There are certainly bad actors, as there are in any human institution. But this is not a political attack on Donald Trump. And even if it were, even if others should have been prosecuted or should be prosecuted in the future, and people say there's a double standard because they were not prosecuted, but Trump is being prosecuted, what's the answer? To give Trump a free ride here, to go from a double standard to no standard at all? I don't think so. I think you take the politics out of this issue and prosecute where the law and the facts warrant it, regardless of the person's prior position or political party.
John Bolton, former U.S. ambassador to the UN and former national security advisor. Always appreciate your time and your insight. Thank you.